I believe no one can look at you and not be inspired. So thank you to start with for this inspirational features and smile you always give and project. Dr. Fadumo Dayib, you are in Beirut, and Lebanon has been presidentless for over 2 years. We finally have a president who promised to defy patriarchy, to confront injustice, and to triumph over corruption. Yourself have a dream. You have a dream, a song to sing. Your dream is bigger and larger than expectations. Do you think you'll be able to fulfill it one day?
Yes, I'm very, very sure that I will one day. I'm very, very optimistic about that.
You are the woman running to be Somalia's first female president. Why do you want to be a president?
I want to be a president because I believe I can make a great change in Somalia. I believe I can lead Somalia much better than it has been led for the past, I would say, 40 years. I believe I am capable. I am patriotic enough, passionate enough to make a difference, a meaningful difference in my country. And I am running, and I want to become the president in Somalia because I actually believe I am the leader that the country has been looking for all these years.
How hopeful are you, honestly?
I am not only hopeful, I am very sure. Yes.
Your path cannot be but remarkable. Your parents were uneducated. Your father was a truck driver, and your mom sold tea by the roadside.
Yes.
And the two had moved to Kenya to start a new life together.
Yes.
So you were born there in 1972 in a displacement camp. The family was, however, deported in 1989 to Mogadishu. You've been living in Finland since 1990. You did not learn to read and write until the age of 14 years.
Yes.
But now, she's holding 3 master's degrees, among which one from Harvard, and is currently working on her PhD in women's governmental participation and empowerment in post-conflict regions.
Yes.
What a life. How proud are you of this path?
I am not proud, I am blessed, I am privileged. There's a difference, and I was able to do what I am doing because of a mother who greatly believed that I could become whomever or whatever I wanted to become in life. A mother that invested everything that she had, and we did not have a lot, because she wanted me to have an education, because she understood that education was the key to life, and that economic emancipation would be the freedom that I needed in life. And if it weren't for my mother and people like her, because there are a lot of people in my life who have always helped me, I wouldn't be where I am. So I am very blessed, not proud, blessed, and happy to be where I am today.
How much do you believe what you came across, what you have witnessed, has nurtured this willpower within you?
Everything that I've had to go through in life, and my life has been a very hard one. I did not come from a rich family. I did not come from a privileged family. I did not come from an established family. I came from a very poor, disadvantaged family. I have faced hunger. I have faced physical violence. I still have the scars on my body. I have faced deprivation, all kinds of things that are unthinkable, but I am not bitter. because those things made me who I am today. They made me the strong woman that I am. And everything that happens in life happens for a reason. And what has happened in my life paved the way for where I am and for where I'm going. So yes, that life became the wings upon which I am now flying.
You repeatedly talk about your mother and the impact she has on you.
Yes.
And you are the outcome of your mother at the end of the day. And life is full of lessons, and your life by itself is a lesson. But what were the major values your mother fed you with?
My mother was a very strong woman. She was born in a very harsh environment, a pastoralist. She never had an education, had to take care of the other siblings that she had. She was a very strong woman, and she would always tell me that no one owed me anything. No one on this earth was indebted to me. I had to pave my own way. And I had to understand that no one was going to do anything for me or give me anything on a silver plate. My mother was a hardworking woman. She instilled those values. When I got married, she made me sign an agreement with her that I would not move out of the house until I graduated. I would never ever depend on a man to work for me. And that I would always be in charge of my finances.
Actually, I believe in Somalia, you cannot count a lot on men. How do they live?
Well, I think that is a global issue. I think men anywhere and everywhere cannot be counted upon. It's not just in Somalia.
No, I beg to differ with you. I beg to differ, I disagree.
I think that's a painful reality for a lot of men, and I'm sure you wouldn't want to hear this, but I think wherever we are, women are the ones who are really making a difference. You wouldn't be here if it weren't for a mother who carried you for 9 months and gave you life. So I think women globally are a force to reckon with, and I think they need to understand that, and they should stop tiptoeing around and acting all coy and meek. Being a woman is really it's a privilege, and it's something that they should be very proud of.
There are only 10 men in this room. I was counting them. I cannot differ a lot with you. But honestly, how are the life patterns of men in Somalia? What do? They drink tea and coffee?
Like any country that has experienced conflict, what you find is that women tend to occupy certain spaces in either in the private life as well as in the public sphere. So what has happened in Somalia is that because of the war, women are now more educated, they're more economically free, and they're more visible in the public life. And that happens in many countries. Take Congo, take Liberia, where we have a female president, and many other countries. And I hope Lebanon is going to be one of those countries as well.
You are a public health expert and activist. You made your return to Somalia in 2005, and you started working with the United Nations in Puntland. How did your desire to lead the country spring up?
I have always felt responsible because I had a mother who inculcated that in me as a small child, that I was responsible not only for myself but for the well-being of others as well. And I was never a child as such, because I was also responsible for my siblings, whom I also brought to Finland.
But it's like a fairy tale. You don't know your country. You have lived 25 years outside Somalia, and then suddenly you feel responsible towards it.
I have always known that I was a Somali. Although I was born in Kenya, I never lived in a refugee camp or a displacement camp in Kenya, but I always knew that I was a Somali. So when the Kenyan government made the decision to deport me in 1989 along with my family, I remember as a young child I was given a white card that said, "Go home." That was my boarding pass to Somalia. And Somalia has always been home ever since. And so I think you must understand that Somalis, whether they are born outside of the country or inside the country, have a very strong attachment to the country, particularly people in the diaspora. The only thing that keeps us going is the fact that we have a country and that one day we will go back home. And I have always wanted to make that possible. I waited for a president to bring us home, to make it possible, until I realized I was the person that I was waiting for. And so although I've been away from Somalia, I worked in Somalia in 2005, I've visited on and off, I have always known my place was in Somalia, and one day I would be there to make a change. I tried to go in as a technocrat, as a specialist. It didn't work. I realized that the change I wanted to see, the social change I wanted to see, was at a much higher level and would demand a lot of sacrifices, and would be a very hard road to embark upon. But I nonetheless took that decision because I believe Somalia and 12 million Somalis are worth it. And so Somalia is not a strange place to me. I'm not a stranger to Somalia. It's always been with me. It still is. It's part of me.
You've always claimed that you have thin chances of winning the elections. However, you announced your intention to run for president of Somalia in the first democratic elections to be held since 1967. You were one of the 18 presidential candidates and the only female. The only female. In Somalia, it's a premiere. Did you try or did you do it to create a social impact or to shock the public opinion?
The reason why I decided to run for office in Somalia was to create social change. Politics is one way of doing it. I wanted to change the mindset that we have of politics and politicians. You have to be from established family, you have to be rich, you have to be, a man over the age of 50 with a pot belly, gray hair. I wanted to challenge this stereotype and say, no, you don't have to be any of that. You can be who you are and still challenge the status quo and come into office. I want to change the misconception, the myth that we have of Somalia. It's not only about guns, hunger, violence. It is also a country that is very beautiful with very resilient people who are very hopeful, who are optimistic. And I wanted to portray that positive image of Somalia, and that's why I also decided to run. But I also ran really because I believe women stand a greater chance of making Somalia a great country, of moving it forward. If I didn't come in this year, I am sure at some point of time, I will come into office as a president. And we just need to, chip away at that.
You're a mother. You have how many kids?
I have 4.
4 kids.
Yes.
How old are they?
My oldest is 20, my second born is 18, and my third born is 13, and the youngest is 10. And I'm very proud of my kids. I'm very happy to be a mother.
A young and beautiful mother. I don't know why it made me think of Aung San Suu, this lady who has sacrificed her family for the principles she was standing by and for. She's not on good terms with both her sons, and she lost her husband. Do you think that the path you're now following is affecting your family life and affecting your relations with your children and husband?
Before I decided to run, I really thought very thoroughly about this. And I knew there are challenges and sacrifices involved. I looked at the country and I looked at my people, and I decided it was worth it because I believe my life is a vocational calling. My mother lost 11 children before she had me. And I understood that I survived because I'm here to serve humanity. And that calls for doing certain things despite the challenges you will face. So when I declared the fact that I wanted to serve Somalia and wanted to serve humanity, my marriage of 26 years broke apart. But I believe, even if it fell apart and I lost a lot of very close relationships, including my own siblings, there were a lot of other people who filled that gap. And I have come to the realization that as long as my children are there, and all these other wonderful people who are almost like a family are there, it's worth it. Because I honestly believe this is my vocational calling. And so nothing will stand in the way of doing that. And I don't regret for even 1 minute, embarking on the road that I embarked on, and I hope to one day make a difference. The difference between me and Aung San Suu Kyi is that she now came into office, and instead of really serving humanity, she is doing harm to it. Look at what she's doing to the Rohingyas and to the other people inside that country. I do not want to have made all these sacrifices to end up harming humanity. That is not what I want. And if that is going to be the road, if that is going to be the outcome, I pray to God that I never ever get into office, because that's not what I am.
Since you announced your candidature for presidency, you have been receiving death threats. Your life is threatened. Mm-hmm. Female politicians like Indira Gandhi, like Benazir Bhutto, and the third world countries paid their life for their own countries. Do you think it's worth it?
Yes, I am. I think 12 million Somalis are worth it. I am a patriot, I'm a nationalist. I love Somalia, and I believe Somalia is worth it. I'm not scared of death. I told you my mother lost 11 children. I was critically ill. I almost died, but I survived. To me, death is not the final destination. It's not the end, because I believe there is life after death. And so when I started getting death threats, I actually was very flattered. I was very flattered. And I knew I was doing something right. I was doing something good. Because of all the 18 other male candidates, they chose to focus on me because they know what I am capable of. They know what change I can bring. And so they must have felt very scared to make such threats. And I'm very flattered, and I hope they will continue making those threats, because I'm not scared.
I hope you remain flattered without being threatened. You have, the whole package. You're outspoken, you're charismatic, you're pretty. Are you an American product?
What does an American product look like? This is a problem that a lot of female politicians, particularly in Somalia, face. Because they couldn't say that I was uneducated. They couldn't say that I was not competent. They couldn't make any other challenges or assumptions. And so, because of who I am and the fact that I am now educated. They perceive me to be an elite, although I have had to fight my way, to where I am today. I really felt very insulted. I still do. They could have called me many other names. They could have said many other things, but to call me an American puppet or a stooge was a very, very disrespectful label that was attached to me, because I am the last person to be ever called anything like that. I am a Somali patriot. I am a nationalist. I believe in one Somalia. On top of that, I am an Africanist, a Pan-Africanist. And so I felt very insulted that they would call me that. But then I realized that was the only thing they could call me. That was the biggest insult they could throw at me, because everything else failed. I was called a prostitute, I was called an infidel, I was called all kinds of names, and that didn't actually have any impact on me. This was the last insult they could throw at me. But I'm still standing, I'm still Somali, and I will always be. No one can take that away from me.
Your name is Fadumo Dayib, and they also call you Fadumo Deko.
Yes.
What Deko is about? What does it mean?
Deko means the sufficient, because when my mother lost 11 children, and she had me, she said, if this child survives, then she's sufficient. I don't need any other children. And so my second name, my nickname, means the sufficient. And people who are very close to me or who know my background, they call me Fadumo Deko, but to also pay homage to my mother by calling me by that name.
You're a woman, you're a remarkable woman. How do you portray the impact you have today on Somali's women in particular and on women in general?
I would like to believe that I've had a positive impact, that I've been able to inspire women, and that I've been able to make them understand that they have every right to be in the public sphere. When I came forward, Somali women were begging to be members of parliament. They were negotiating their existence. And when I came, I said, no, we are here, we are not negotiating, we are not asking for something that is rightfully ours. And as a result, a lot of Somali women started going into politics. We have a gender quota, 30% gender quota, only 14% of it was filled. But when I came forward, now we have 28% of that gender quota filled. And even on the continent, when I meet different African women, they tell me, you've inspired us, your story inspires us, and we've understood that politics is not a dirty game. It's actually an ethical issue. It's a moral obligation. It's a civic duty that we must embark upon. I am not a politician. I don't make my livelihood from politics. I am a lay person, just like you, who believes that things should be done right, that people are human beings who need to be treated with dignity. And so instead of looking at politics as something that is dirty, I decided I was going to make a change and actually come into politics. We need people who are not politicians to be in politics so that they can have a greater impact. We associate politicians with corruption, with a lot of problems in our different countries. I wanted to change that to say, listen, politics is very similar to hiring somebody to come and work for you. If you don't like that person, you fire them, you get somebody else. If that person doesn't satisfy you, ultimately you end up doing the job. And politics is the same. We bring in these politicians. If we are not happy with them, we should get rid of them. And we should then take on that role and do what we're supposed to be doing. And so I want us to approach politics, and that is how Somali women are now approaching it, as a moral obligation, that it is a civic duty incumbent on us to make a difference in our own countries. Despite the challenges, despite the sacrifices, it is worth it, because we do it for our children and for our grandchildren, so that they don't have to become refugees. They don't have to go to countries that don't want them, so that they don't become beggars, always wanting to go back to their countries but not being able to do that. I want to give, and every Somali woman understands this, they want to leave something good for their children. We want to give them a good legacy, a good country. And that is why we're doing what we're doing.
You've always repeated that you have suffered from being treated as a second-class citizen, an unwanted person, a displaced person. You felt the refugee community was largely marginalized, tolerated, but never truly wanted. What about today? You're about to become president, maybe? How do you see the era, if ever you become president? What is your vision for Somalia? And how can you build up your country?
We have more than, I think, 5 million Somalis in the diaspora. And everyone that I've had the privilege of meeting and speaking to, they've always said they wanted to go back home, but they couldn't. I've seen old Somali men, I've seen old Somali women crying, you know, as they die in different countries because they can't go back. I've seen children, including mine, who have never been born inside Somalia, yet who identify themselves as Somalis and who say, I want to go back one day. When are you going to make Somalia right so I can come back and you know, be at home? I was a refugee in Finland. I went with my two younger siblings, and I have been there on and off since 1990. The Finnish society integrated me into their country. They gave me education. I only started reading and writing at the age of 14, and before I could even go further, we had to leave. But the Finnish society didn't give up on me. They didn't say, oh, she's useless, you know, 18 years old and she's not very good at reading and writing. They put me through vocational schooling. And so I did my education in Finland. I started working in Finland. It integrated me into the society, and I think that is what each country that receives refugees is supposed to do. You're supposed to give them the opportunity to study so that they can go back to their own countries and make it better. If you don't give them that opportunity, they are not going to be able to do that. And that is what I want to give to 12 million Somalis. I want to give the opportunities that I've had in the West to Somali children, to the Somali youth. You know, we are 12 million. Of that, 75% is under the age of 30. 68% of the Somali youth are unemployed. That is why you see them joining piracy. That's why they go into terrorism. That is why you see them dying crossing the seas. I want to give them a better life because I'm able to do that based on my experiences. I want them to have a dignified existence. I want Somalia to be great because we have the resources. We are a resource-rich country. I want us to be able to compete with other countries. And I honestly believe I have the capacity, the capability to do that. Somalia does not need a warlord. Somalia does not need a rich man who only thinks about exploiting the country. What Somalia needs is someone who is really compassionate, who is educated, who is patriotic, and who is there to serve them without an agenda. Because we have 5 million Somalis wanting to come back home. We have more than 2 million Somalis internally displaced. And now Somalia is about to have a famine. We have people dying of hunger almost on a daily basis. 150 people are dying. And it's precisely that reason why I believe it's a moral obligation that we do this. And so having a refugee, a former refugee, become the president of Somalia, I think is really something that would be worth having, because I am able to relate. I've lived the lives that they've lived. I am them. If we succeed, they could become like me, and if they fail, they could become like I was, as a child. And so, without really having to, I think, take much time on this, I believe leaders have to be able to lead the lives that the people that they're leading are living. They need to be able to empathize, they need to be able to sympathize, and they can only do that when they have really walked in the shoes of the people that they govern.
Fadumo Dayib, I still have two questions. Before opening the door to questions of the audience, you are very active on social media, and you are connected to Somalis all over, and mainly to the youth of Somalia.
Yes.
And young people are the ones, of course, is your capital, and you're capitalizing on them. Do you feel from this connection you have, they truly believe in you, and you are the messenger, and you are the liberator of those young people in Somalia?
Yes, because when I went to Somalia, the first time I landed in Somalia at the airport, when I came out of the plane, the first thing they said to me was, "Madam President." And this is amazing in a country whereby a few years ago, people were saying we will never ever have a female president. People were telling me you cannot run for office. It's un-Islamic. You're not a good Somali woman. You're not a traditionalist. You cannot do this. But as a result of running and really being on social media and having access to millions of Somali homes, they finally realized that it is actually possible. It is a possibility. And for them, the youth actually tell me that even though you didn't get into office, you still are our president. And that really also pushed them to come into politics. And now we have a very youthful parliament, which also has, as I said, 28% of the members of parliament are, come from the gender quota. And so it's been very inspirational. The youth are the ones who will one day go to the voting polls and who will vote for me. If we had democratic elections, I would be the president in Somalia. And that's all.
My last question. Do you consider yourself to be a role model for women all over?
I wouldn't want to take on that responsibility. I think that's a huge responsibility, being a role model for women. I certainly hope that I'm a role model for my 4 children.
Beautiful. I'm going to open the floor for questions. Mrs. Yassin.
An honor to meet you for all of us, I think, and you're definitely an inspiration for women here. I would have had a quick question. I know that Somalia is riddled with poverty, corruption, famine, terrorism, unemployment, illiteracy, and that's just the main problems. So actually we're doing a bit better than you are, but not that much better. I was going to ask you, I know you don't have time, but maybe guidelines and a place where we can look it up. What's your program to deal with all of this? What's your vision? How are you planning to tackle those issues? They're huge issues. Whether you're a woman or a man, I think the question is the same. How are you going to go about that?
She spoke about it. She spoke about it.
I spoke about that, but I'll just try and be very concise. I must let you know that we now have a government. We have a president who was selected. This is not an election. We don't have democratic elections in Somalia. What we have had is clan elders choosing men into office. And the clan system does not acknowledge women, neither does it acknowledge the youth. So it's an elite club for old men. That's what Somali politics has been this far. And my platform was really one of, it was based on economic prosperity, security, and underpinning that was peace and reconciliation. I was the first candidate who said I would negotiate with al-Shabaab because I didn't believe violence was the way. I didn't believe military, warfare was going to be an option, because if that were the case, we have more than 25,000 African Union troops. If you add the Somali National Armed Forces, they almost make up 50,000 armed forces. They have not been able to do anything about terrorism because the terrorists address socioeconomic disparities. And as long as we have corrupt politicians, we're not able to provide education, free health care, then they will always be able to recruit young people because of the problems that exist. So I said we needed to negotiate with them in order for us to be able to move forward. Peace and reconciliation is very important because we have had wars, not because we came from different ethnicities or we came from different nations. We are one people, we speak one language, and we have Islam as the predominant religion. There's no reason why we should be fighting, yet we have one of the most prolonged conflicts in Africa. So really, I did not want to come into office because I was a woman. I did not say, select me because I am a woman. I don't believe in that. I believe that we must select people based on merit, on their competency. And so what I said in Somalia was, from all the 18 male candidates that you have, you choose me because I'm the most qualified and the most competent compared to what you have here and what you have had previously. And so really what we need is education. What we need is economic prosperity. We have more than 73% of Somalis living on less than $2 a day. And what we need is really healthcare, because we have Somali mothers and children dying. It's insane that I always have to see people like my mother and people like my siblings on a daily basis, because still what my 11 siblings died of, which were treatable diseases, is what still Somali children are dying of today. And a lot of Somali mothers are dying because of complications. And so I don't know if I answered, but that was the platform.
Thank you. I'll take two further questions. Saad Safir.
I'm absolutely worried about your point of view against men. Would you promise us when you become president to treat us kindly?
You shouldn't worry. I mean, I will tell you one thing, and it's very interesting. You should ask me this question here in Lebanon, because this is what they always ask me in Somalia. There's a story that we have in Somalia. There was a female leader. Her name was Arawelo, and apparently, whenever Somali men see me, they remember Arawelo. And Arawelo was known for being a very strong, fierce leader. What she did was she castrated majority of the men and only kept a few for child breeding purposes. Now, no one can verify this story. It can't be verified, but this is a myth that is there. And so the first time I declared my candidacy, they said, oh no, this is Arawelo. And I hadn't even said anything. So listen, I don't believe we are not here to compete with men. This is not a competition it's between men and women. I see this is how I see it. We are running a race. Somali men have been running all this time. We need to get to the finishing line. They're becoming fatigued. What we are saying is, we still have energy. Let us finish the race and win, because we're in it all together. I don't believe in segregating men.
Last question.
Hi, my name is Talar, and I want to say that I've never seen a room full of people more mesmerized or in love with anyone until right now. So thank you for that. My question is basically, since you entered politics, what has been your lowest point and how did you deal with it?
What has been my lowest point? My goodness. I don't think I've had a lowest point in politics because I came prepared psychologically, spiritually, mentally, and physically. But I think one of the most discomforting, things was really losing my privacy. I am a very shy, I'm an introvert. I had to change that personality and become an extrovert, and and losing my privacy and the privacy of my own children was a very, very painful thing, because I realized as a result of coming forward, I had put my own children, who I love very much, at risk. And that was really one of the things that was quite disturbing, and still is, because I am not only getting death threats, but it's also my children. And that, as a mother, to me, is the most vile and shocking thing that one has to face. And all just because you really want to be you, to exercise your human rights, to be the full human being that you are, and to say, you know what? I deserve to be in the public light. I deserve to be visible. I deserve to be educated. I deserve a better life. I deserve dignity. And just by saying that, someone actually feels they need to kill you. So that was one of the most discomforting things. But as I said, it comes with the package, and you cannot choose and pick. This is also an unfortunate
Dr.
part
Fadumo
of it.
Dayib, thank you so much for this inspirational talk.
Thank you.
We're all under the charm, and we're always impacted. Thank you.
Thank you very much.